Hello and welcome to Runes for Pathfinder 2nd Edition Remastered Part 2. In the previous video we discussed the foundation for runes in Pathfinder, primarily the relationship between fundamental runes and property runes, and in this video we're going to expand on that by covering a few of the other additional rules, including how to etch or create a magic rune, how to upgrade runes, and how to transfer runes from one item to another. This video does rely heavily on the crafting rules, so if you've not already viewed my videos on crafting, it's highly recommended that you do so before continuing here. Links to those videos are provided in the description. The term etching a rune is just a formal way of saying creating a rune and adding it to an item. This follows the same system as crafting anything else. The only real difference is you're not making an entirely new item, you're just adding to an already existing item. If you want to etch a +1 weapon potency rune on a longsword, you would first need to be at least expert proficiency in the crafting skill and have the magical crafting feat. You also need the longsword you plan to etch the rune on, and you need to either have the formula for weapon potency runes, or you need to have another item with that rune on it already that you can copy. And you would need to have at least half the rune's price available in raw materials. In this case, that would be half of 35 gold, which is 17 gold and 5 silver. From there, assuming you have the formula, you spend 1 day of work as usual with crafting, and after that you will make a skill check, and if that's successful, you can pay the balance to finish the project or invest more time in lowering the balance. Again, check out my videos about crafting for more detail on how all of that works. Some runes, typically fundamental runes, allow you to upgrade lower level versions into higher level versions. If a rune is eligible to be upgraded, it will say so in its description. Here, the description for the armor potency rune spells it all out for you. The process is simple. It works just like etching a rune, except the price is discounted by the price of the existing rune that is being replaced. So if you want to upgrade a suit of +1 chainmail to +2 chainmail, you would treat it the same as crafting a +2 armor potency rune from scratch. You need to have either the formula for armor potency runes or have another item with the armor potency rune on it that you're going to copy. You must be at least 11th level and have master proficiency in crafting. You need the magical crafting feat, and you must provide 50% of the rune's price up front in raw materials. The difference with upgrading, though, is the normal price for this rune is 1060 gold, but when upgrading, you discount it by the original rune's price of 160 gold, making the upgrade price 900 gold pieces. You pay 50% of that up front, or 450 gold, spend 1 day of downtime working, assuming you're using the formula, and then make a crafting skill check as usual. Then, assuming you succeed the check, you can either pay off the remaining balance of 450 gold, or spend more days of downtime lowering that balance further. Note that the table on page 224 of the GM Core rulebook outlines a typical progression for upgrading armor and weapons, and follows the pattern of upgrading the potency rune, then the resilient rune for armor or striking rune for weapons, then upgrading the potency rune again and repeating. This is a typical progression, but it is not absolutely required. For example, you can upgrade the striking rune of a weapon before upgrading its potency rune. You can even have a striking rune on a weapon that has no potency rune. But given the availability of these runes and the way their prices are staggered, it makes most sense to follow the progression that's provided in these charts. You can also use the crafting skill to move a rune from one item to another, or swap a rune on one item with a rune that's on another item. Doing so takes 1 day of downtime and costs 10% of the rune's price. If you're swapping runes between 2 items, then you only use the price of the highest level rune to determine the cost. You don't have to pay 10% of the price of each of the runes being swapped, only the higher level one. Also, you don't need a formula to transfer a rune, but otherwise this is identical to crafting or etching a rune. You must have the magical crafting feat and pay half the cost, which is 5% of the rune's price up front, then make your crafting check, and if that's successful you can choose to pay the other half or continue working as normal with crafting. There are a couple of other rules that you might want to be aware of. First, if swapping runes, they must both be fundamental runes or both must be property runes, and the final item or items must be legal. For example, you can't transfer a wounding rune from a dagger onto a mace because this rune requires it to be attached to a slashing or piercing weapon, and maces are bludgeoning weapons. One tweak to be aware of is when transferring potency runes. It's possible you might end up with an item that has property runes on it that can no longer function because they require a potency rune that is no longer present. This doesn't prevent you from transferring the potency rune, but affected property runes go dormant until they're either transferred to an item that does have the necessary potency rune, or until you etch the appropriate potency rune onto the item that is bearing those dormant runes, at which time they reactivate and can function again. I also want to mention runestones. Runestones cost 3 gold pieces each, and they essentially provide a way of transporting a rune without requiring it to be etched onto a weapon, shield, or suit of armor. These are provided so that GMs can distribute runes to players, so that those players can decide how best to use the runes rather than giving them runes already etched onto equipment they may not want to use or may not even be able to use. Runestones work like any other item for the purposes of crafting or transferring a rune. You can etch a rune onto a runestone, or you can transfer a rune off of an item and onto a runestone. The big difference is that runestones are consumed and destroyed as soon as this rune is removed off of them and transferred to another item, and that transfer has no cost associated with it. Under normal circumstances, when you transfer a rune off an item, you have to pay 10% of its price, but if that item is a runestone, there is no cost associated with transferring that rune from that runestone and onto another item. So that's it for the fundamentals of runes. For those of you who would like a summary of what has changed with the Remaster edition, the key mechanical differences lie with the crafting rules. The minimum time required to craft or upgrade a rune has decreased from 4 days to 1 day, and it is now possible to craft an item without having its formula as long as you have a sample of that item and are making a copy of it. However, having the formula allows you to craft the item faster. In addition to that, there are several other points that have been clarified since the original release of 2nd edition. Those are, you do not have to upgrade potency before other fundamental runes like resilient and striking. You don't have to upgrade runes step by step. For example, you can upgrade a +1 weapon potency rune directly to a +3 rune, and you do not need a formula to transfer a rune, but you do need to have the magical crafting feat to transfer runes. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments below, and as always, I'd like to take a brief moment to thank everyone who supports this channel, whether that be by clicking the like button, subscribing to the channel, or subscribing to the Patreon. I greatly appreciate everything you do to support me. With that, thanks for watching, take care, and happy gaming.